Coach Phil. My information is right up above my head here. If you ever want to send me email about a question, idea, or a guest that you would like to have on the show. Okay, what I like to do with every episode is bring on my buddy Brian Monahan's book. I'll just bring up his cover right here so you can have a peek at what the book looks like. Customer Delight 365. So today what I've done is picked June 4th quote. And what he says in this book is, the quote is from Marilyn Tuttle. And what she says is, thank your customer for complaining and mean it. Most will never bother to complain. They'll just walk away. That's a scary thought, isn't it? Brian's take on that is, do you have a process for gathering feedback from your customers? It's easier than ever to post a survey online and beat the ones who won't complain to the punch, possibly saving a customer who otherwise would walk away. What are you waiting for? Survey for delight. That's some wisdom from my good buddy, Brian Monahan. I'm also want to introduce our sponsor today, and there's two of us from the same company. And we're just going to run a little video here for you. I'm going to bring on my guest today, Nick Marinello. I can't speak today, Marinello. He's from New Jersey. He's a good friend of mine. He's also with the same company. We're both certified focal point business coaches and trainers and facilitators. In addition to that, he's an area developer, and he's been with Focal Point for how many years?
Just about 6.
And I've known him for about 5.5. And
yeah, it's been fun.
It's one of the nicest people I've ever met. He's very humble, but very efficacious. His background is Wall Street. That's why we have the headline we do. What can you learn from 30 years of Wall Street? Well, we're going to find out today by asking Nick a few questions, both some fun ones and maybe some more serious ones. But he went to school, became a stockbroker, and then for 30 years, you worked in that space in a variety of different roles. Isn't that right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, thanks so much. Pleasure to be on the Business Renovator this morning, Phil. I appreciate it. And thank you for those comments, by the way. You're also a fine gentleman, and I'm glad to know you. So, I started back in the early 80s, graduated college with a business degree, and went to Wall Street with, a briefcase, a calculator, and a copy of the Wall Street Journal, right? And quite naive, came from a blue collar family. So I really didn't have anybody that was in the business. So I went down to Wall Street and got my hard knocks and learned the hard way, smiling and dialing the telephone and, trying to build a book of business, meaning getting clients to believe in a 21-year-old, or I guess at that time, 22-year-old, that I knew what I was doing with respect to picking stocks and helping them grow their wealth.
I think about that job and I shiver because that's a tough nut to pick up the phone and talk to people and convince them to buy something that's intangible and risk their possible future, right? I was going to say I entertained it just for a little fraction, not Wall Street, but in our local marketplace, looked at possibly doing that. And when I saw what it was all about, I thought, well, I don't think I have the kahunas to do that.
Well, and I didn't think I did either, but right, you put yourself out of your comfort zone. In fact, I was not only naive about the ways of Wall Street, I was also quite shy. I remember when I was told I had to make 200 to 250 cold calls in a day. When I first started on the street, I was like, oh my God, right? You're talking to a guy that, and I'm going to date myself here, way before the internet, when you had to look up somebody's telephone number. If you wanted to call them, we used to call information. In the States, it's 411. And I was even nervous as a kid calling the operator to ask for somebody's telephone number. Never mind calling up, trying to pitch him on a stock. So yeah, it was a learning experience, no doubt, but it was great. It taught me a lot. It taught me how to overcome fears. So
Oh,
go ahead.
that's an interesting point. What did you do to combat any fears that you had along the way?
I just did it. I mean, again, not coming from a whole lot of money. I needed to make money when back in the day, it was a commission job. So, I had no choice but to get on the phone and start making calls. So, I get up early in the morning, head down to Hoboken, New Jersey, to take the PATH train into the World Trade Center at the time, and then walk down to my office on Wall Street. So it was about a 2.5 hour commute just to get to the office. And then you start banging out calls. And then you would call from 8 in the morning until 8 at night, sometimes 9 o'clock at night. This first 6 to 12 months in the business, when you don't have any clients, you have to go out there and create some excitement about working with a 22-year-old kid.
You remind me about a quote by Orson Swett Martin. It's our stick-to-itiveness and our get-to-itive. So you're living a proof that his quote is accurate.
Yeah, no, it's not an easy business to break into, that's for sure. And it's probably even more difficult today because nobody wants a cold call, and nobody takes a cold call anymore. So at least back in those days, in the 80s, people are actually picking up the phone. Now with caller ID and everything else, nobody picks up the phone. In fact, I got 2 calls right while you were introducing me. I got 2 calls with numbers that I didn't even know, so I just deleted them. So I mean, and that's the world we live in now. But yeah, so I progressed. I started out, as a stockbroker, which is what they were called back then. Now it's financial consultant, financial advisor. But we were stock jockeys back then, and got into a situation where I wanted to get a little bit more, I guess, out of the business. So you go to Wall Street with a mindset where you're going to make people rich, and at the same time, you're going to make yourself rich. At least that's what my naive mindset was early on. And and you soon realize, meaning 12 to 24 months, that it's not going to be that easy, and you can't do it all. Trying to prospect for new clients, nurture clients, service clients, do the research on stocks, do the research on asset allocation. You can't do everything. So you have to start to then focus, where, really what you can do effectively. And that's when you start to pick up other people's research ideas and so forth, and just focus on building a book of business, clients. So
it reminds me of something that Brian Tracy, who we're affiliated with, and it served me well way back. I don't know, I'm dating myself 3 or 4 decades ago, when I first came into understanding what Brian Tracy was all about. And somewhere in his wisdom, he shared an analogy of an airplane. When you start any new venture, whether it be Wall Street starting off as a 22-year-old stockbroker, or using your phraseology, stock jockey. I've never heard that before. That's pretty cool. When we start any new opportunity, because we're talking about the business renovation, what's the state of business? He says we need to think like an airplane, full throttle at the early stages to get the thrust and the energy to get off the runway. And a lot of people who are starting a business or starting a new role don't do that, and they hold back on the throttle, and they run out of runway, which means they will run out of cash perhaps, and they crash and burn because there's no more runway and there's no more cash or energy to do it. So what you just said was something that confirms what Brian taught me a whole bunch of years ago, was to be like an airplane and full throttle, get off the ground, go hard at first, lots of effort because you got nothing else to do other than to plant seeds and cultivate it. And then once you start to get some clients, you start to elevate, and then you can pull back on the throttle a little bit and navigate through your career.
No doubt. I mean, and that's exactly what I did. It's also, and I didn't do it just once. I did it several times in my career with respect to starting over. All right. So I started on the street as a stockbroker working for somebody else, and eventually I decided to get into management. I learned sales management, became the national sales manager for an independent firm, and then I decided to start my own brokerage firm. And the reason why I did that really was control and leverage. I wanted to have a little bit more control over my own destiny, and I wanted to be able to leverage some relationships that I developed in a fashion that would create more wealth for me. Frankly, one of the things you learn, as I started to say before, is you want to make people wealthy, you want to make people rich, but really to make yourself wealthy as an investment advisor, you do need to work with people who are already wealthy. So the passion of making, hoping to make people rich is great, but really to make any kind of money as an investment advisor, you need to be managing bigger numbers. So you can't focus all of your energy on people who are hoping to get rich. You have to kind of focus your energy on people who are rich, and you want to keep them rich, right? So then you pepper in some of the smaller clients that you can hopefully build wealth for. And that was a revelation that, again, being naive, coming from blue collar family, I had no idea, that's what you needed to do to make money on Wall Street. You needed to actually work with people who already had the money. So when I started my brokerage firm, I started to look for other advisors that I can recruit into my firm who already had wealthy clients. Because as a owner of the firm, where you're getting a piece of the action, so to speak, and you want to have a piece of a larger pie, a small piece, but a very large pie. So, and I had to hit that, as you said, hit that throttle again, for a couple of years. Instead of recruiting clients, I was recruiting advisors into my company. So, but it was the same mindset, just go for it every day, hit it hard. And then eventually, once you get a critical mass established of some revenue being generated by the advisors, you can pull back on the throttle.
So it sounds like Brian was telling us the truth. Right?
Yeah. I mean, you and I went through the same, similar trainings over the years, and we know the sigmoid curve, right? The life cycle of a business. And I remember sitting in certification training in San Diego, and watching them do, I guess it was Ian at the time,
Right.
and saying, you know what, I lived every point on that curve more than once. I just didn't know there was a name for it.
There's kind of a science for it. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah.
The other thing it brings up, and I've been talking about this with a client of mine that I'm working with. They've got 32 people on their team. It's a sales company across Western Canada. They're a distribution firm, and I keep flicking back to the learning cycle. And you reminded me of that again because of what you just said. You started a couple of opportunities, and you didn't know what you didn't know until you got into it. And then once you started to know it, you were at that different stage of understanding. So now are you not unconsciously incompetent? Now you're consciously incompetent. Move to consciously competent, and then to some point in time become unconsciously competent, which is the habitual, automatic process of doing things, whether taking a shower, driving a car, or running a business. Before I go into, I got to ask one question, and then we're going to leave the Wall Street stock stuff, because a friend of mine, buddy, friend, partner in some things, asked me a question. He's a very analytical thinking kind of gentleman, and his question was not what stocks to buy. I wouldn't have brought those up anyway. But he said, how do you decide what to invest in? Is it technical or is it from the gut?
Yeah. All right. So the answer, I'll give you the answer from my perspective as to what I do. But I'm not in the business anymore. I haven't managed really money for about 10 years, other than my own money, family money, now that and so forth. But really, the thing about investing on Wall Street, and I truly believe there's a long-term bias for stocks to go higher. Okay, so you need to be in the market for a period of time. There's a saying on Wall Street: it's not timing, but time, with respect to making your investments work. So this. Traditionally, you have the fundamental approach and you have the technical approach, right? The fundamental approach is to look at the underpinnings of a company. Okay, how are they making money? Is it sustainable? Who is their competition? What type of multiple is it trading at? All the things that you hear about, when you're watching CNBC or whatever the case might be. Is it a good company to own? Warren Buffett, okay, perfect example. Okay, value investor. He's looking at, would I be willing to buy this company? Okay, so that's the fundamental side of it. The technical side is looking at charts. Okay, and I do a lot of it, and I enjoy that. And you can see trends, you can see patterns when you look at charts. I'm a long-term chartist. When I look at stocks, I'm not good. Not that it doesn't work. It does work. I'm just not good at it on a short-term basis.
Right.
It's true. I mean, and that's the other thing you learn on Wall Street. You have to learn, what you're good at and what you're not so good at, and don't believe your own BS, as I like to say. So at the end of the day, you can look at both then. So you take the fundamental side of it, say, okay, this is a good company, and then technically, where's it trading relative to, the past 6 months, year, 5 years? Okay, is there any kind of a pattern here where it's an upward trend? Is there some sort of support or resistance in the trading of the stock? So, both elements work, to some extent. But what I found is, picking individual stocks is very hard for the normal person. I had a Bloomberg terminal in front of me for many, many years, and I had all the tools I possibly needed, and I still made mistakes. Okay, so I do right now. I'm primarily invested in indexes. I'm a big ETF guy. I enjoy doing asset allocation strategies as opposed to individual stocks. And again, you have to look for a long term, and on a long term, stocks go higher. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Cool.
So, long answer to a short question. I apologize.
That's okay. It's much appreciated. And that's all we're going to talk about, the stock side of Wall Street. Because what I really want to hear, and I think which is really more relevant to what you're up to these days, is you're not in the Wall Street world anymore, but you're bringing that experience of along your journey of where you've been at those different stages of the learning cycle, and you're helping small to medium-sized businesses and entrepreneurs accelerate through and not have to stub their toes as hard as you did through your journey. We're both with Focal Point. What made you move from the money world? It's people there too. So I think we're both in the business of H to H, human to human. It's just what are the products and services we're providing. So you've moved from money and Wall Street to entrepreneurialism and money and people. What inspired you to shift into coaching?
Yeah. I like a lot of things in life. I mean, things happen, okay, for a reason, I guess, but things evolve. So after I sold my last business, I had several businesses. The last one was a financial technology company that I sold in 2011. And then I worked for the acquiring company for 2 years, and which was a big corporation. I was running my company as a division within their corporation. I realized that the big corporate world really wasn't for me. I was really more of a small entrepreneurial type of person. So after I left that, I had a 2-year contract I had to fulfill after I sold the business. After I left that, I decided that I wanted to, basically start to look at, applying some of my experience and my skills in helping other entrepreneurs, helping other people, basically build their wealth. I mean, because what I learned really was any wealth that I was fortunate to establish in my own life was a function of equity ownership in the businesses that I built. It wasn't, so much getting an income or salary. It was really the equity ownership. So really getting back to my initial passion on going to Wall Street, making people rich, that was really what I thought I was going to do when I first got to Wall Street, and I wanted to do. I now believed I had the skills, I had the experience to help people get rich, but do it through their business. And as you pointed out, not have them make the same mistakes that I made. And every business owner is going to make a ton of mistakes. It's just part of the equation. But you can learn from others, not to make the same mistakes. And so what I decided to do, I'm a big baseball fan, and I realized there are many 300 baseball hitters that get into the Hall of Fame, but they're not all good batting coaches. So I needed to take my skills, take my experiences and so forth, but then learn how to teach, right? Learn how to coach other people. And that's when I always been attracted to Brian Tracy's methods. I heard in 1991 at the old Brendan Byrne Arena in the Meadowlands in New Jersey. And him with Zig Ziglar, Harvey McKay, trying to think, there might have been one or two other speakers that day. And so I've been a follower of Brian's methods and coaching. So I decided to, look into that. Flew out to Vancouver. Actually, was fortunate to have Brian and his wife and others that night when I was out there doing my discovery, and it just hooked me on. Now I have the tools, have the experience, okay, and now I'm going to have the tools to actually help others. So. Moving the needle in somebody's life is a pretty cool thing to be able to do, and what we do, right? I mean, that's why we get up in the morning now. It's our why.
Yeah, that's what you said. That's an understatement. That's what really cranks me up. Yes, the money's nice, but it's the aha moments, the BFOs, blinding flashing of the obvious that they go, oh my God, I never even thought about this. Where we get to work with people that changes the life or help them to get to where they want to get to, thinking that was only a dream. One of my favorites isn't one of the most economically successful, but was a young single mom with a set of twins and one other child, so three, in the accounting profession, didn't like winter. She's from Canada. We're in the same place I live, Alberta, and she wanted to be able to live half the time in here and then the other half somewhere warmer in the winter. And so when I first started working with her, it was just kind of an idle wish, kind of I wish I could do it. And so we got her to think about some of the things that she had done before, being a mom, raising kids on her own, running an accounting practice, getting into her focus on all of those things she's already done, leveraging that kind of stuff. 8 months later, I can believe it was that fast, but 8 months later, she's living in Cancun and has been ever since. And now it's full time in Cancun. And she sold her practice because she realized she didn't want to be in accounting. So those are the things that crank me up.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, first of all, I can relate to the wanting the warmth. In New Jersey, it's not as cold as Alberta, obviously, but as you know, I split time between New Jersey and North Carolina. Primarily to get the longer season for golf and boating. As you get older in life, you want to do a little bit more of that. And in New Jersey, it's a short season. It's shorter than North Carolina, anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not in the same category as Alberta, but it is those stories, okay, that get you going. I mean, I had one where during an initial consultation, sitting at a diner with a potential client, he was telling me about life and his business and what he was doing. And one of the things I asked him was, I went into the diamond mapping mindset a little bit with respect to getting balance in different aspects of your life. And he said, one of the things I wish is that I had a relationship with my daughter. He said, she's at that age now, she's a little difficult. And I says, well, we can work on that too. And he looked at me and I said, no, I'm not a life coach and I'm not a child psychologist. I said, but what I can do is I can work into our program more time off for you to spend with your daughter. And I just know you probably, if you spend more time with her, you probably have a better relationship. And he laughed a little bit. He didn't think it was something that would be working into the plan, right? So, and long story short, after working with him, I guess probably about 9 months into the engagement, he came back to me and said, I laughed at you in the diner that day. He says, but my relationship with my daughter is better now than it's ever been. And it's because you had me carve out several hours a week, okay, to spend with my daughter. And the business didn't falter. He goes, I thought if I left the business for those hours, it would be a problem. But so you have these other aspects of what we do. Yeah, you're working on the business, but as my tagline says, build a better business so you can live a better life. And that's really, what we do. It's fun. I mean, this is the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. Okay. No doubt. I've made more money on Wall Street, not going to lie, but this is great. I mean, this is good stuff, and you have an impact.
You absolutely do. And I like that example of it's not all about the money. It's about the lifestyle and helping people when they get to the end of their life, they, if at all possible, have no regrets. They're not going to look back and say, I wish I had spent more time with my daughter. So you found a way for him to make that happen. It's like group of 32 that I have the honor and privilege and pleasure to work with, I promise them, I says, although this is really not a time management course, what we're going through, I've created a sales training program. It's 6 months long, and we take everything from the assessment side of things to the personal development side components. Like I first met Brian Tracy back in the 80s and went to the Phoenix seminar, which we now offer as Perform at Your Best. So there's components of that tied into it.
Mhm.
And then there's a sales process. And then I run a mastermind, and I promise them a bunch of things, and I can promise them with confidence because I've seen it over and over. And I says, as you adapt and implement this and try it out, you're going to have more time to do some of the things that you thought you'd never be able to do. But I can't tell you when it's going to show up. I just know it will. So last week, I had one of the guys talk about a situation where he said, well, we have this list that seems like 200 things we can offer. We got a ton of great things to offer. But most of when I talk to people, they don't want everything. They just want something. So what I picked out of this is I was able to present something that was relevant to the prospect that I was talking to. What would normally take me 2 hours took me 25 minutes. And that was one of the examples where we can help people find a way to get more done by being more efficient or effective with the stuff they already have. It's
yeah, no doubt. And the clarity component of things that we do, and my clients, I warn them up front that I'm going to spend the first number of sessions together on establishing clarity, where you're at, where you want to go, how you're going to get there, what are your constraints, all those things that you and I do. But and that does hit me from my experience on Wall Street. One thing they were good at, was getting you to commit, to living a big lifestyle, right? Getting the fancy car and getting the couplings at the time and the gold and the Rolex and so forth, and not realizing at the time they were doing that to lock you in because now you have these big bills you had to pay and you had to work harder to pay the bills so that they can make more money. But it did force you, once you had the vision of what you wanted, it actually did motivate you, to achieve those things. So, and even as little kids, right? You're in grade school and they're having to do the vision board, right? Cutting out the picture of the boat, cutting out the picture of the vacation you want to go on, whatever it might be. Those things that we do that are not, people wouldn't normally put into a business category, but it is a personal performance component of things, translates into better performance in their business. So I spend a lot of time with that. As I do know the emotional attachment to those goals is going to give them the tenacity to go through some of the rough patches that you're going to have as a business owner. And
it's spot on. Though another person that I follow, he's since passed away, taught me a lot of what you just said. It was not that I'd never heard it before, but he took complicated psychological phraseology and put it into, dumb it down for me and others. But I took it on personally. And he says that running shoe manufacturer's tagline, just do it, isn't good enough. I mean, you talked about the Rolex and loading people up with debt and things that they have to do this or they'll fail. Well, our creative subconscious minds is so powerful that in many cases, the people will fail and they'll go bankrupt because they haven't changed the vision. They don't have the dream to pull them. They're doing it on a have to basis versus a want to, choose to, love it basis. And when we can get to that state where we've got the vision, the passion, and the clarity as to who we want to be, what we want to experience, and who we want to help, and where we want to, you put a dream. I saw pictures of your I think they're your legs and your wife's leg. Your toes are showing up and out past in the foreground. Beach. We don't have many beaches here, so I was very envious. So it's you're living the dream that you're talking about, right? And you've also lived in that coercive arena in Wall Street. I'm assuming it was quite coercive. Do this or else. And if you pay attention to what Brian teaches in the Perform at Your Best series of information, he says that doesn't work very well either. We need to want to have something to look forward to and to work towards because we want to, not because we have to. And it's
exactly.
I'm a big advocate of the language, which is really hit home by Lou Tice out of Seattle, who taught me how to marry all of this stuff together. So a combination of what Brian's and other people have done is what I get to share. And hearing you live what you've done so far in this little bit of time, that we're sharing this with the world. It's exciting.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I'm living a very good life, okay, but I'm not Bill Gates. I don't have that kind of money, but I have what we need. I have, and now it's time to to pretty much make sure that my two boys are solid citizens, and they're going to be okay going forward down the road. And you start to change your perspective. You know that.
Yeah.
And what's nice about working with some of the business owners that I work with, they're in their 30s and 40s, and they're still in years where they're raising their kids, and they're having the same stresses that I had, getting home for little league practice and all the things that they want to do. It's good to give them a perspective that, what, you can do it. Okay. Trust me, just go with me on this. Okay. Stay the course. You're going to be fine. And, I think it resonates only because of the little hair that I have and been there, done that type of thing.
Would you say it's what we do is we're time compressors? We're able to help people get to where they want to get to. First of all, identify what that is. And then if they don't know, like you said, clarity, but then compress it to help them invent a way to make it happen for them so that they can be up on the beach.
Yeah, well, no doubt, and I don't spend a lot of time on the beach. I'm still working pretty hard, but at the end of the day, yes. I mean, look, if you can learn from other people's mistakes, okay, you're going to shorten your learning curve dramatically, and that's the key, and I know I have the experience and the know-how to do that, but I wanted to learn how to really teach others and have resonate with them. And that's the reason why I went to Focal Points, just I needed the toolbox. I needed the curriculums. I needed the way of articulating, what I really wanted the point to get across. And, having the tools now to do that has just made it so much easier, to get people to truly understand and then to actually follow the plan. Right. So, you create the plan with the focal point materials and so forth, but then you have the credibility, okay, because you kind of did it, right? So that's what makes, I think, my practice effective right now, and I think it also makes it very fulfilling for me to do because I get quick results, a lot faster than I would ever. People get to the mobile so much faster than they would ever do it on their own. I'm not saying they wouldn't get there. It would absolutely, 9 times out of 10, if they're doing the things they need to do, they'll get there. But it's going to take them longer. It's going to hurt more.
Yeah.
I have a lot of scars on his back, okay, from all the mistakes I made in the early years of my businesses, no doubt. And if I had a coach, I didn't even know about coaching back then. I wish I did.
Yeah, no kidding.
I could have I could have definitely cut back on the scars and cut back on some of the aggravation.
One of the things you said in the green room before we went live was pioneers. Could you just tell our audience what you meant? Would you say that again? Pioneers.
Yeah, you can always tell the pioneers, they're the ones with the arrows in their back, right? Probably not a politically correct statement. Why'd you make me say that? so
you're right.
No.
I shouldn't have made you say that, but
so at the end of the day, it's the people who were the first one out there on the cutting edge get beat up. I mean, there's mistakes that are going to be made because the path is not as clear. And one of the business I started was we were pioneers. I brought institutional investment management technology to trust banks, and it kind of was new because nobody was able to figure out how to connect the Wall Street trading platforms to the trust accounting systems. That was kind of the link that was missing. So we figured it out, and we were pioneers. And that was one of the reasons why this last sale of my company was actually a good one, because we had something that nobody else had really put in place yet, right? So, but there was a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of costly technology mistakes that we made. So, first one in is really going to get beat up. That's why it's nice to learn from people who already have been there.
So as much as this is, I could talk to you for much longer, but be respectful for people watching this. Try to keep around 30 minutes. So if people want to catch up with you, this is where they can get you, right here. Build a better business, live a better life. Nick's contact information is all right there if you're so inclined and want to talk to Nick a little bit more to find out how he's able to help you not live on Wall Street unless that's where you want to live, but to take your business to where you want it to go to, so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls that he's already experienced. So Nick, thank you for being on the Business Renovator with me and sharing some of your valuable time. I always enjoy having a conversation with you, whether it be on the phone or now on a live stream. It's been terrific.
Absolutely, Phil. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, I mean, God bless all the entrepreneurs that are out there. The bottom line is, you're making a difference in your life and the people around you. And Phil and I truly enjoy being a part of that. And I tell everybody, I just want to be a constructive voice in your success, right? So that's where we want to be. So good luck to you. Thanks for your time. This was great.
Talk to you in a sec. That brings us to the conclusion of this session of the Business Renovator with your host, Coach Phil. My information is above. If you're seeing this on the replay, please hashtag replay. If you liked what you heard and listened to from my guest and myself, share it out with the other people. And please, if you would be so inclined, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember that everybody that's on here watching live or in replay, that you are wonderful, and spell wonderful, WUNDERFUL, because you are wonderful.